There comes a moment in every person's swell when they realize they have been paying a debt they never agreed to owe. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the quiet aftermath of a conversation that left you smaller than you were before it started. It happens in the silence after someone dismisses what you feel, and you find yourself apologizing for feeling it. It happens the 20th time someone breaks a promise, and instead of walking away, you find a reason to stay. Most people never notice the moment this pattern begins. They only notice, years later, how tired they have become. What if the exhaustion you carry isn't really about the world being hard? What if it's about the things you have allowed, one small permission at a time, until permission became habit, and habit became identity? This is not a video about anger. It is not about revenge, or cutting people off, or building walls so high that nothing can reach you anymore. It is about something quieter and far more important: the slow, deliberate art of deciding what a human being is allowed to do to you and what they are not. Because somewhere between childhood and adulthood, most of us lost that ability. We were taught to be agreeable. We were taught that kindness means endless tolerance, that patience has no ceiling, that love means absorbing whatever another person decides to give us, good or cruel, consistent or careless. And so we grew into adults who can recognize 100 kinds of disrespect and yet still stay seated at the table when it walks in the room. There are behaviors that, when tolerated, do not simply hurt you once. They teach the people around you how to treat you permanently. Every time you accept something that diminishes you, you are not just enduring a single moment, you are writing a rule. And people, whether they mean to or not, learn to live by the rules you write with your silence. So let's talk about 7 of these behaviors, not as a checklist to recite, but as mirrors, because somewhere in the next several minutes, you will likely recognize a moment from your own life, a person, a relationship, a version of yourself that stayed quiet when it should have spoken. Stay with that recognition. Don't run from it. That discomfort is not the enemy. It is the beginning of clarity. Consider a woman named Elena, though she could be anyone, a friend, a co-worker, a version of you. Elena had a gift for understanding people. She could sense a bad mood before a word was spoken, adjust herself to keep the peace, absorb tension so that others didn't have to feel it. For years, she believed this made her valuable. It made her needed. What she didn't realize was that being needed and being respected are not the same thing. And somewhere along the way, the people around her had confused her flexibility for infinite capacity. They stopped asking what she needed because she never told them. They stopped noticing when they hurt her because she never let it show. By the time she finally understood what had happened, she was 34 years old, successful by every external measure, and utterly unfamiliar with her own limits. She had spent so long being tolerant that she forgot tolerance was supposed to have edges. This is the first behavior that should never be permitted to settle into normalcy. The erosion of your boundaries, so gradual that you don't notice the walls have disappeared until you're standing in an open field with nowhere to hide. A boundary is not a wall. People confuse the two, and the confusion costs them dearly. A wall keeps everything out. A boundary simply says, this is where I end and you begin, and there are conditions under which you may enter. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are the architecture of self-respect. And the moment someone repeatedly ignores them, pushing further after you've said no, dismissing your discomfort as oversensitivity, treating your limits as suggestions rather than truths, you are witnessing something that will only calcify with time. People do not usually violate a boundary once and stop. They test it, and if it moves, they learn exactly how far they can go the next time. Here is a truth that stings before it heals. The way people treat you is rarely a mystery. It is a direct reflection of what you have shown them is acceptable. Not because you deserve mistreatment, no one does, but because human behavior, at its core, is shaped by consequence. When there is no consequence for crossing a line, the line stops functioning as a line at all. It becomes a suggestion, and suggestions, unlike boundaries, are easy to ignore. Think of water finding a crack in stone. It doesn't force its way through with violence. It simply flows toward the weakest point, patiently, repeatedly, until what was once solid gives way. People who repeatedly disregard your boundaries are doing the same thing, whether consciously or not. They are searching for the places where your resistance is soft, and every time you let them through without cost, the crack widens. This is why the first behavior you must stop tolerating is not one dramatic betrayal, but the accumulation of small violations, the joke that goes too far and gets defended as just teasing, the favor that becomes an expectation, the private information shared without permission, the no that gets negotiated instead of respected. None of these, alone, seem worth a confrontation. That is exactly why they work. Nobody erodes your self-respect with one enormous blow. They do it with 1,000 small ones, each too minor to justify outrage, until the outrage you should have felt from the beginning has nowhere left to go. Now let's turn to a second behavior, one that hides beneath something we are taught to value. Honesty of a different kind, the honesty of intention, dishonesty. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being surrounded by people who are not truthful with you. Marcus learned this the hard way. He had a business partner he trusted completely, a man who smiled easily and spoke with the kind of confidence that made doubt feel embarrassing. For 2 years, Marcus built decisions on top of information that was quietly, consistently incomplete. Not lies exactly, that would have been easier to spot. Omissions, half-truths shaped carefully enough to avoid detection, while still steering outcomes in one direction. When the truth finally surfaced, what hurt Marcus most wasn't the financial loss. It was realizing that trust, once he'd given it fully, had been treated as an opportunity rather than a responsibility. Dishonesty is corrosive precisely because it doesn't announce itself. A lie rarely arrives wearing a warning label. It arrives dressed as reassurance, as convenience, as the path of least resistance. And here is the psychological trap. Once you discover one lie, your mind doesn't simply correct that single piece of information. It begins questioning the entire architecture of the solars. Every kind word becomes suspect. Every memory gets re-examined under a colder light. This is why dishonesty, even in small doses, is so much more dangerous than people assume. It doesn't just damage a moment. It retroactively damages history. There is a difference between someone who occasionally makes a mistake in judgment and someone who has made deception a pattern of navigating relationships. The first is human. The second is a signal, one that deserves your full attention rather than your forgiveness on autopilot. When honesty becomes negotiable to someone, when they treat truth as a tool to be deployed only when convenient, you are not looking at a flaw to be patiently corrected. You are looking at a value system, and you cannot love someone into having a value system they have not chosen for themselves. What frees people from tolerating dishonesty is not suspicion. Living in constant suspicion is its own prison. What frees them is clarity about what they will and will not accept as the cost of a relationship. Because the truth, even when it's painful, respects you. A lie, even a gentle one, does not. The third behavior brings us somewhere quieter and, for many, more familiar: emotional manipulation. The practice of making someone else responsible for feelings they didn't create. Picture a conversation that happens in countless homes, countless friendships, countless workplaces. Someone expresses hurt over something that was said or done. Instead of acknowledgement, they receive a redirection. "You're too sensitive. I was just joking. Don't make it a big deal. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Notice what happens in each of these responses. The original concern disappears entirely, replaced by a narrative in which the person who was hurt becomes the one who must now defend themselves, apologize, or manage someone else's discomfort at being confronted. This is the architecture of manipulation, and it is remarkably effective because it doesn't feel like an attack in the moment. It feels like confusion. You walk away from these conversations, unsure of what just happened, uncertain whether you were wrong to feel what you felt, wondering if you're the problem. That fog is not an accident. It is the entire mechanism. A person who manipulates does not need you to agree with them. They only need you to doubt yourself long enough to stop pursuing the truth. There was a young man named David who spent years in a friendship where every disagreement somehow ended with him comforting the person who had wronged him. He would raise a concern, and by the end of the conversation, he would be the one apologizing, the one reassuring, the one working to repair a rupture he hadn't caused. It took him a long time to notice the pattern, because each individual instance felt small, explainable, forgivable. It was only when he looked at the pattern as a whole, not one conversation, but 50 of them, stacked over years, that he understood what he'd been living inside of. Manipulation thrives in isolation, both literal and psychological. It works best on people who don't compare notes with others, who don't say the situation out loud to someone outside of it, who internalize confusion instead of naming it. This is why one of the most powerful acts of self-preservation is simply describing what happened, plainly, to someone you trust, without softening it to make the other person look better. Often, the moment you say it aloud, the manipulation loses its grip, because it was never built to survive scrutiny. It was only built to survive silence. The fourth behavior is one that many people mistake for a personality trait, rather than what it actually is: a choice, repeated so often it becomes a pattern. Unreliability, the habit of treating commitments as optional whenever something more convenient arrives. There is a peculiar kind of grief that comes from loving someone who is undependable. It's not the grief of loss. They're still there, still present in your life. It's the grief of never being able to fully lean on them, of learning to build your plans with a silent asterisk beside their name. You stop making arrangements that depend on them showing up. You develop a second plan before the first one even fails, because some quiet, tired part of you already expects it to. Reliability is not a small virtue. It is one of the primary ways human beings communicate love, respect, and priority. When someone consistently shows up when they say they will, consistently follows through on what they promise, consistently treats their word as binding, they are saying something deeper than the words themselves. You matter enough for me to be consistent. And when someone repeatedly fails to do this, cancels at the last minute, forgets what they agreed to, treats their commitments to you as the first thing to be sacrificed, when something better appears, they are also communicating something, whether they intend to or not. The tragedy is that most people who tolerate chronic unreliability don't frame it as disrespect. They frame it as a character flaw to be managed, with something to be worked around rather than addressed directly. That's just how they are. But consider what that phrase actually concedes. It concedes that a person's word means nothing, and that you have decided to build your expectations around that meaninglessness, rather than ask them to change it. Over time, this doesn't just affect the relationship. It reshapes how you trust everyone. You begin to expect disappointment as the default outcome of hope, and that expectation quietly poisons relationships that never gave you a reason to doubt them. The fifth behavior is subtler still, and perhaps the most psychologically damaging of all, because it operates not through action, but through the absence of ownership, the refusal to take accountability. Every person makes mistakes. This is not in question. What separates a healthy relationship from a corrosive one is not the presence or absence of error. It is what happens after the error is named. Some people, when confronted with their own mistake, feel discomfort, sit with it, and eventually say some version of, "You're right, I did that, I'm sorry." Others deflect immediately, reflexively, as though accountability itself were a physical threat. They will find a way to make the conversation about your delivery, your timing, your tone, your past mistakes, anything except the specific thing they did that caused harm. A woman named Priya spent nearly a decade in a friendship where every conflict ended in the same peculiar way. No matter what the original issue was, by the end of the conversation, somehow, she was the one who had done something wrong. She began to notice this pattern only after describing several incidents to a therapist, who pointed out something she had never seen clearly. In every story Priya told, the resolution required her to apologize, and the other person's behavior remained unexamined. She wasn't imagining a coincidence. She was describing a strategy, whether conscious or not, a way of avoiding accountability by redirecting the emotional weight of every conflict onto someone else. People who cannot take accountability are not simply flawed communicators. They are, functionally, incapable of repair, because repair requires acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is the one thing they have built their entire emotional defense system to avoid. You cannot fix what someone refuses to admit exists, And if you find yourself in a relationship where you are always the one apologizing, always the one adjusting, always the one absorbing blame regardless of who actually caused the harm, you are not in a partnership. You are in a system designed to protect one person's ego at the permanent cost of your own clarity. The sixth behavior lives in something quieter than manipulation and more corrosive than a single insult: contempt. The subtle, repeated communication that you are less than, delivered through tone, through eye rolls, through the particular silence that follows when someone decides your thoughts aren't worth a real response. Contempt rarely announces itself as cruelty. It disguises itself as humor, as bluntness, as just being honest. Someone makes a joke at your expense in front of others, and when you react, you're told you can't take a joke. Someone dismisses an idea you've shared, not by disagreeing with it, but by making you feel foolish for having suggested it at all. Someone sighs when you speak, checks their phone while you're mid-sentence, responds to your excitement with a flatness so deliberate it can only be described as a message. These moments accumulate slowly, and because each one is small enough to dismiss individually, most people don't recognize the pattern until they notice something has changed in how they see themselves. They've grown quieter. They've stopped sharing things they're proud of. They've started pre-editing their own thoughts before speaking, anticipating the dismissal before it even arrives. There is a well-documented pattern in the study of long-term relationships. Contempt, more than anger, more than conflict itself, is one of the strongest predictors of a relationship's collapse. This is because anger, however uncomfortable, still treats the other person as an equal worth arguing with. Contempt does not. Contempt looks down, and once a relationship, romantic, familial, professional, or otherwise, settles into a pattern where one person consistently looks down on the other, no amount of surface-level kindness can undo the underlying message being sent every single day. If you have ever found yourself shrinking in front of a particular person, becoming quieter, more cautious, less yourself, pause and ask what has been communicated to you over time that made shrinking feel like the safest option. That answer is rarely comfortable, but it is almost always accurate. The seventh behavior is the quietest of all, and perhaps the hardest to name, because it isn't really something someone does to you. It's something someone fails to do. The slow withdrawal of effort, the gradual transformation of a relationship from something mutual into something one person carries alone. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being the only one who remembers anniversaries, the only one who initiates conversations, the only one who notices when something is wrong and asks about it. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens the way a fire dims, not extinguished all at once, but starved slowly of the attention that once kept it burning. And because it happens gradually, the person carrying the relationship often doesn't notice the imbalance until they are utterly depleted, wondering why connection has started to feel like labor. An older man named Thomas once described this in a conversation that stayed with everyone who heard it. He said that for the last several years of his marriage, before it ended, he had felt less like a partner and more like a maintenance worker, keeping the relationship functioning through sheer effort while his wife had, without ever formally deciding to, stopped contributing anything beyond her presence. He didn't leave because of a single dramatic betrayal. He left because he finally understood that presence without participation is not partnership. It's cohabitation with someone who has quietly resigned. One-sided effort is dangerous precisely because it doesn't look like abandonment. The person is still there, still physically present, still saying the right things when directly asked. But love, friendship, and respect are not sustained by presence alone. They are sustained by consistent, mutual investment. The small, repeated choices to show up for another person's inner life, not just their physical proximity. When that investment stops flowing in both directions, what remains is not a relationship, but a role, performed increasingly by only one person, for an audience that has stopped watching. Now, having walked through these seven, the erosion of boundaries, the normalization of dishonesty, the fog of manipulation, the quiet damage of unreliability, the refusal to take accountability, the slow poison of contempt, and the imbalance of one-sided effort, a question deserves to be asked honestly. Why do so many people tolerate these things for so long, even when some part of them knows exactly what's happening? The answer lies in a psychological mechanism most people never examine directly: the difference between what we deserve and what we've been trained to expect. Expectation is built early, often before we have the language to question it. A child who grows up in an environment where love is inconsistent learns, without ever choosing to, that inconsistency is simply what love looks like. A person who was praised for being easy to manage, for not causing trouble, for absorbing conflict rather than raising it, learns that their worth is tied to their tolerance. These lessons don't arrive as explicit instructions. They arrive as atmosphere, absorbed slowly, until they feel less like conclusions and more like facts about the world. This is why tolerating harmful behavior so often feels, from the inside, less like a choice and more like an obligation. The mind doesn't experience it as, I am choosing to accept this. It experiences it as, this is simply what relationships require, and breaking that pattern requires something more difficult than willpower. It requires re-education, a slow, deliberate process of teaching yourself a new definition of what is normal, one that has nothing to do with what you were taught to expect, and everything to do with what you actually saw. There is a particular moment that many people describe when they finally begin this process, and it rarely looks dramatic from the outside. It looks like silence. It looks like someone sitting alone after a conversation that once would have sent them into anxious self-doubt, and instead feeling something unfamiliar: clarity. Not anger, not even sadness necessarily, just a quiet, settled understanding that what happened was not acceptable, and that the discomfort of saying so is smaller than the cost of staying silent. This clarity does not arrive because someone finally became strong enough to demand better. It arrives because they finally became honest enough to stop explaining away what they already knew. That distinction matters. Strength is often mistaken for the ability to endure. Real strength, the kind that actually changes a life, is the ability to stop enduring what should never have needed enduring in the first place. Consider what it actually means to set a boundary and hold it. It does not mean becoming cold or punishing people for being imperfect or treating every disagreement as a crisis. Human beings are flawed. Relationships require patience, forgiveness, and the willingness to extend grace when someone genuinely tries to do better. The line is not between people who make mistakes and people who don't. No such line exists. The line is between mistakes that are acknowledged, repaired, and rarely repeated, and patterns that are defended, minimized, and repeated indefinitely because there has never been a cost attached to them. A boundary, held consistently, is not an act of aggression. It is an act of information. It tells the people in your life exactly what happens when certain lines are crossed, and it removes the guesswork from the relationship entirely. Some people, upon encountering a boundary for the first time, will respect it immediately, sometimes even with relief, because clear expectations are easier to live within than ambiguous ones. Others will test it, push against it, accuse you of being different, difficult, unrecognizable. This reaction, uncomfortable as it is, tells you something essential. It reveals whether the relationship was built on mutual respect or on your willingness to accept whatever was given to you without complaint. This is the part that most people find hardest to accept. Some relationships do not survive boundaries. Some people were only close to you because you had none. When the boundary appears, the relationship reveals what it was actually built on. This is painful, but it is not a failure. It is information arriving late, but arriving nonetheless. And it is far better to lose a relationship built on your silence than to keep one that requires your silence to survive. There's an old observation, reshaped here in different words. A tree that bends in every wind, permanently, without ever standing straight again, is not flexible. It is broken in a shape that looks like flexibility. For years, many of us mistake this broken shape for a virtue. We call it being easygoing. We call it being low maintenance. We call it being the bigger person. But there is a difference between bending occasionally in the face of genuine storms and living permanently bent, shaped entirely by the pressure of other people's demands, having forgotten what standing straight even felt like. The 7 behaviors described here are not a checklist for judging others. They are not a permission slip to become suspicious of everyone, to treat every mistake as evidence of malice, to withdraw from connection out of fear of being hurt again. That would simply trade one prison for another. The purpose of naming these patterns clearly is not to make you guarded. It is to make you discerning, able to tell the difference between a person who occasionally stumbles while genuinely trying, and a person whose stumbling has become a permanent, unexamined feature of how they move through relationships. Discernment, unlike suspicion, does not close you off from people. It opens you to the right ones, because it frees you from the exhausting work of trying to manufacture safety in relationships that were never going to offer it. When you stop tolerating boundary violations, you don't lose the capacity for closeness. You lose only the relationships that depended on your boundarylessness to survive. When you stop accepting dishonesty as an inevitable cost of connection, you don't become cynical. You simply stop wasting your trust on people who never intended to earn it. When you refuse to be manipulated into carrying blame that isn't yours, you don't become combative. You become clear, and clarity, more often than people expect, actually strengthens the relationships worth keeping. Somewhere, right now, someone is sitting with a memory this video has surfaced. Maybe it's a parent who never once said sorry. Maybe it's a partner who made you feel crazy for noticing what was obvious. Maybe it's a friend whose presence had quietly become a performance rather than a partnership. Whatever it is, notice what your body does when you think about it. Notice where the tension sits. That tension has been trying to tell you something for a long time, and most of us have gotten remarkably skilled at not listening. The work ahead is not about becoming someone who tolerates nothing. That person is just as lost as the one who tolerates everything. The work is about becoming someone who knows the difference between a mistake and a pattern, between a hard season and a permanent character, between someone who is still learning how to love well and someone who has simply learned that you will stay no matter what they do. That distinction, once you can see it clearly, changes everything about how you move through your relationships, your friendships, your family, even your relationship with yourself. Because here is the final, quiet truth beneath everything discussed so far. The way you allow yourself to be treated by others is often a direct mirror of how you treat yourself in private. If you interrupt your own needs the way others interrupt your sentences, if you dismiss your own feelings the way others dismiss your concerns, if you refuse to hold yourself accountable to the same standard you demand from everyone else, then no boundary you set with other people will ever fully hold, because the boundary was never really missing out there. It was missing in here, in the quiet space where you decide, every day, whether you are someone worth defending. This is where real change begins, not in a dramatic confrontation, not in cutting people off in a blaze of righteous anger, but in the small, private moment when you finally stop explaining away what you already know to be true. The moment you stop calling contempt bluntness. The moment you stop calling manipulation sensitivity on your part. The moment you stop calling unreliability just their personality. The moment you stop calling the absence of accountability keeping the peace. Naming things accurately is not cruelty. It is the first act of respect you owe yourself, and it is usually the last thing anyone teaches you to do. So let this be the realization that stays with you long after this ends. The people who deserve your patience will never require you to abandon yourself to keep it. The love, friendship, and respect worth having in this life do not ask you to shrink, to doubt your own perception, to carry blame that was never yours, or to accept less simply because leaving would be harder than staying. What is freely given without boundaries is rarely valued the way you hope it will be. But what is offered with clear limits, held with quiet consistency, tends to attract exactly the kind of people capable of honoring it. And slowly, without announcement, without applause, that is how a person stops surviving their achievements and finally begins living inside ones that are actually worth the name.